I don't actually think most people have an overthinking problem. I think what's really going on is something slightly different. And if you see it clearly, it changes how you deal with it. Because a lot of what we label as overthinking isn't really thinking things through properly. It's delaying, it's hesitating, it's sitting in that space where you don't have to commit to anything yet. And it shows up in ways that feel normal, so we don't question it. Taking longer than you need to get ready, rereading something before you send it, putting things off because it doesn't really feel right yet. It feels like you're being careful, but there's something else underneath it. When people hear the word overthinking, they picture someone sat there stressed, going round in circles, not able to switch off. And sometimes it does look like that, but more often than not, it's a lot quieter than that. It looks like hesitation. It looks like going back and forth on something that doesn't really need that level of attention. It looks like convincing yourself that you're just being thorough, when deep down you already know what that decision is. Because if you slow it down for a second and look at it honestly, in a lot of situations, you're not actually confused. You're not lacking that information. And you're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because you don't want to deal with what comes after you do it. Take something simple like getting ready to go out. You've got lots of options in front of you, and none of them are particularly wrong, but you still find yourself going back and forth, trying things on, looking in the mirror, stepping back and changing again. And it goes a bit further than that sometimes. You might even message someone, "What are you wearing tonight?" just to make sure you're not out of place. Not because it actually matters that much, but because you don't want to feel like you've got it wrong. So instead of just choosing something and getting on with it, you stay in that loop a bit longer than you actually need to, trying to land on the right answer. And the thing is, even when you do make a decision, you don't always leave it there. Because if you turn up and feel like you've got it slightly wrong, maybe you're a bit too casual, a bit too smart, suddenly it's on your mind all night. You feel like you stand out and you become more aware of yourself. You start wondering if other people have noticed, what are they going to think? And before you know it, you're not even present what you're doing anymore. You're in your head again, managing how you think you're being perceived. And you can feel it in real time as well. You walk into wherever you're going, and for a split second you scan the room. You're looking at what everyone else is wearing, how they're carrying themselves, trying to place yourself in it. And if something feels slightly off, it sticks. Not because anyone's actually said anything, but because you've become aware of yourself. And once that awareness kicks in, it's hard to switch off. So instead of just being there, just enjoying it, part of your attention is pulled inwards, managing how you feel rather than just being present in that moment. And it's not just in situations like that. It shows up when you're about to send a message and you read it back 3 or 4 times, tweaking it slightly each time. Not because it's wrong, but because you're trying to control how it lands. It shows up when you're thinking about posting something and you hesitate. Not because you don't want to, but because you're thinking about how it might be received. And it shows up in bigger ways as well. Things like appearance, aging, changes in how you look over time, grey hairs coming through, your skin changing, your body not quite the same as it used to be. And instead of just noticing it and accepting it for what it is, it can turn into something you analyse more than you need to. You start comparing, you start questioning, you start thinking about how you're seen. And for some people, it can even lead into feeling like they need to change something. Not always because they truly want to, but because they feel like they should. And all of this follows the same pattern. So when you strip it all back, what you're actually doing in those moments isn't really problem solving, it's delaying a feeling. Because if you really sit with it for a second, most of the time the situation itself isn't that complicated. What is complicated is how it might feel. It's the thought of walking into a room and not feeling comfortable. It's the thought of saying something and it not landing how you expected. It's the thought of being seen in a way that you didn't intend. And rather than just experiencing it and moving through it, you try to get ahead of it. You try to predict it, soften it, control it before it even happens. But the irony is, in trying to avoid that discomfort, you actually create a different kind of discomfort because you're carrying it before anything has even happened. And that's what keeps this cycle going. This is where it starts to have an impact over time, because if you're constantly sitting in that space of thinking, adjusting, hesitating, trying to get things just right before you move, you don't build trust in yourself. You don't get used to acting and dealing with whatever comes next. Instead, you get used to waiting until it feels right, waiting until it feels more certain, waiting until you thought it through. But that point never really actually comes, because there's always another angle, another possibility, another outcome you could consider. So you stay mentally busy, but practically stuck. And over time, this doesn't just affect small decisions, it changes how you move through life. You start hesitating more. You start second guessing things that used to feel simple. You rely less on instinct and more on analysis. And the more you do that, the less confident you feel making decisions quickly. So you end up in this position where you're always preparing, but rarely just doing. And that gap between thinking and doing is where people stay stuck for years. And when you look at the world we're in now, it's not surprising. There's constant inputs. You're seeing how people look, how they live, what they're doing, what they've actually achieved. And even if you don't consciously compare yourself, it still shapes how you see things. It raises expectations. It makes you question yourself more than you would otherwise. So naturally, you hesitate more. You think a bit longer before acting. You look for reassurance, for certainty, for some kind of sign what you're doing is right. And that's where overthinking quietly builds. But here's something worth sitting with. Most of the situations you overthink don't actually require that level of thought. The outcome is rarely changed by how long you spend analysing it. Whether you think about it for 10 seconds or 2 hours, the reality tends to stay the same. The only thing that changes is how you feel while you're going through it. And usually the longer you stay in your head, the heavier it feels. And if you really look at it, most of the things you've spent time overthinking in the past didn't turn out to be as big as they felt at the time. You adapted, you handled it, you moved on. But in the moment, it felt like it needed solving. And that is the pattern. Not everything that feels important actually needs that level of attention. So instead of trying to stop the thoughts, shift your focus. When you catch yourself in that loop, pause and ask yourself something very simple. If I wasn't overthinking this right now, what would I do? Not the perfect answer, not the safest option, just the honest one. Because most of the time you already know, it's just being buried under layers of second guessing. Once you act on it, even in a small way, you start to break the pattern. It also helps to change how you see decisions. Not everything needs to be perfect. Not everything needs to be the best possible option. A lot of these things in life are neutral. You make a choice and you see how it plays out, and you adjust it if necessary. But when you treat every decision like it carries weight, like it says something about you, like it has to be right, then the pressure's going to build, and that pressure feeds the overthinking. So the goal isn't to get rid of overthinking completely. The goal is to recognise it for what it actually is. Because once you see that it's not really about the situation in front of you, but about avoiding a feeling behind it, it becomes a lot easier to step out of it. And once you're willing to face that, everything else tends to quieten down. So next time you find yourself stuck in your head, don't just label it as overthinking and leave it there. Take a second to look at what you might be holding off from. Because more often than not, it's not the situation that's the problem. It's the discomfort around it. And once you're willing to face that, everything else tends to quieten down. If this video resonates with you, I'd appreciate it if you could drop me a comment and let me know your thoughts. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.